All right, so without further ado, welcome Shaheed to our show. Woo!
Yeah, well, I'm honored to be here. I would like to thank y'all for having me, and definitely looking forward to having a positive, educational conversation.
Yes, so let's get it. I think you can start by telling our friends a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Shaheed Muhammad. I'm a graduate of Morgan State University, 2016, with my electrical engineering degree, and I was born and raised in the Nation of Islam, and I'm currently actively working to dedicate my life towards pushing humanity forward, in particular, the resurrection of the black man and woman in America and throughout the world to elevate us to a higher state of consciousness and productivity where we can be reflections of God and better than we are in our current condition. So that's my self perception.
All right, that sounds good. Tell us about some of the work that you do in the black community.
Right. So, as a member of the Nation of Islam, being a FOI, some of the work that we do is really geared towards pushing pushing freedom, justice, and equality to our people and elevating us as a unit, as a community forward. And that really comes from having a knowledge of self and having a sense of community and a sense of family as one people. So what we do is we go out, into our communities where we live. So in the streets of Southeast DC, over in East Baltimore, in Crenshaw and Slauson in LA. And we go to the hoods and we work with the people in our community to spread the knowledge of self and to spread love, because that's really what we're missing, in our community. So that's something that we actively do, but we're also striving to establish a nation of freedom, justice, and equality. A nation that is autonomous, that has its own resources, so that we can set up our own laws that are geared toward establishing systems that produce freedom, justice, and equality for everybody who will accept that.
Mm. Yeah, and that's one thing that I definitely do admire about the Nation of Islam. All of the work that you guys put in the community and the fact that you guys are physically in the community making that difference. I think that's really, really good. So, can you go more into detail about like the type of work that you guys do? I know you said you're in DC and you're in Slauson. So, what exactly do you guys do, and how does that work when you encounter people from the community? Are they sometimes, like, I want to join, like, I admire what you guys are doing so much that I want to join the nation?
Right. So pretty much I mean, we're striving to build a nation.
Yeah.
Right. So not just in slogan, but in actuality. So we're striving to unify all our people on the basis of our commonalities, regardless of what creed we say we belong to or what organization we're on. When we work together, then we have the power to do for self and build systems in which we can be free, in which our people can receive justice. Because currently in America, we're not receiving that. We're not in an equitable or a good position. So we are trying. That's our main goal, is to actually set up a nation of peace. So right now in the black community throughout America, the various mosques and members are out in the communities. So we're setting up systems of education. We have farmland. We have really currently we are, I would say, the inception of that brand new nation. So everything that you can think towards being productive and trying to introduce a productive, unifying thought in the neighborhoods, that's what we're doing. So going door to door, knocking on people, giving them a good word, Final Call newspaper, sharing with them the vision of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, which is the progression and the education of our people in the knowledge of self, because we suffer as a people from the lack of knowledge.
I agree.
So you were saying earlier about kind of helping people to become a reflection of God. So what does a reflection of God look like to you?
Right. I think that's the main thing, in the sense that I think we suffer the most because we have an identity crisis. Mm-hmm. So a lot of black men will self-identify as being a real nigga, or women will say that I'm a bad bitch, and that idea is the root of our problems. When in the Bible it says that man is created in the image and the likeness of God. In the Quran it says that man is Allah's Khalifa. So Khalifa means vicegerent, which means successor, one delegated with power of another. So in Islam, Allah has 99 attributes. Allah is Rahman, Rahim, the beneficent, the merciful, Al-Hakim, the wise, Jabbar, Aziz, one possessor of power and one exalted in power. So we as men and women, we have all the ability to reflect all those different attributes. I believe on your first podcast that was about manifestation, right? Mm-hmm. And we as human beings, we have the ability to manifest any idea that comes to mind, right? So God says be, and it is, and we as his vicegerent, his successor, have that same ability. We just have to take the prerequisite steps to manifest any vision or idea that we have. So ultimately, human beings are supposed to be the reflections of God, supposed to stand in God's place as the stewards of the earth, but we have fallen a long way from that. So a real nigga is the opposite of that. A real nigga is like a dead man who doesn't have the knowledge of self, who is self-destructive in his behavior towards himself and towards his family and his community. So a reflection of God is really, that's what we're supposed to be. So did that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, definitely. And I agree with everything that you're saying. I think that we, I've been trying to ask myself, us specifically speaking on our generation, are we growing closer to God or are we growing further from God? Because it is the norm to be a real bitch or a bad bitch or a real nigga. It's not a lot of people who are walking. I don't want to say that it's not a lot of people, but the common thing is not, I'm striving to be closer to God, to be more like God, to be a reflection of God. And I find that people in our generation, when you carry yourself in that manner, sometimes people actually gravitate away from you or grow further from you, And one thing in my walk with God is I always ask God to help me to serve through me in a way where I can bring people closer to them, but in a way where they'll understand it or they'll be able to relate it, So I try my best not to, without disregarding God, I try my best to still be a relatable and still show that people that I'm a person, but God is still within me. So although I'm making these mistakes or although I'm not perfect, I still have the perfect ability to connect with God, to manifest everything that God has planned for my life, and so do you. And I said it to say, I think it's just hard trying to bring people to God when people look at people that are walking in the reflection as, oh, they're too churchy, or oh, they're too godly, or oh, almost as in if what those people represent is unattainable for them.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it.
Yeah. People actually shame you, or they won't shame you, but they'll look at you like you're crazy when you say, I am God.
Right.
I'm a reflection of God. And they're like, what? No, it's only one God. And they're unable to comprehend that. And I think a common thing with our generation is we kind of have a capacity. A lot of us have a certain capacity that we hit, and we don't allow our minds to expand past that. And so I think that's definitely something we should all work on and become more open-minded and more knowledgeable, like you said, knowledgeable of self, because when we hear these things, it's not something that's just out of this world because we recognize it, through obtaining that knowledge over time.
So can you all speak a little bit more about the idea of we are gods? Do you both believe that, or?
Right. Yeah. I think it's one of the greatest questions a person can ask, and I would say absolutely. I would say that, Brittany, every time you look in the mirror, you're looking at the most modern, up-to-date, evolved form of God. Mm-hmm. That's what we're talking about. You are a direct biological descendant of the originator of the heavens and the earth. That's what you are. So it's hard to believe that, because when we just walk down the street and we see humanity in this current state that it's in, it's a total opposite of that. We are we're destructive, and we don't reflect some of the attributes that I just mentioned. So it's not that I, Shaheed, am the supreme being, but right. It says further in the Bible that ye are all God's children of the Most High God. Mm-hmm. So every time you God is a force and power. So every time you have the ability, which we all do to varying levels of degrees, that you manifest an idea that you have in your head that was initially nothing, and you bring that into fruition, into reality, you're in a sense a God in the fact that you're a creator. You are a manifester. You have the ability to conquer and overcome any obstacles.
So how do you feel about the lack of that connection with God in the home? because I truly believe that a lot of that actually starts in the home. And when, you know, individuals or families or unions, whatever you like to call it, lack that reflection or that connection with God, I think it kind of trickles down to the way their children carry themselves, or the safety or the comfort of the home, things of that nature. How do you feel about that?
Right. So I think, are we talking about like within the black community, or just in general?
Just in general,
In
like
general.
within the black family.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess it's all tied together because in the black community we suffer so much because we were raised, taught, and trained by our open enemies. You know, we have people who have kidnapped us from Africa, took us over here, and made us suffer for generation after generation in dehumanizing conditions and robbed from us the knowledge of self. So now we think and act like them, which is the history of the Caucasian race has been a history of anti-God, right? So everywhere that they went and they have gone, they've laid, you know, trails of destruction and carnage in their path. And we have been taught by them to hate ourselves and to be totally away from God in general. So we weren't given real spirituality. We were given watered down Christianity that was taught to make us slaves for them, right? So when it says a lot of things that we have, our relation to God in the black community has mostly been slavery type teaching. So we don't get the practicality and the realness out of truly being connected to God. And because when you do, you would associate that with yourself. Like I was saying earlier, the knowledge of God is the knowledge of self, and the knowledge of self is the knowledge of God. So I think we suffer from a lack of knowledge generally, and that because of our ignorance, all the problems are a result and emergence of our ignorance.
So what do you feel is the biggest problem in the black family today?
Well, I think the biggest problem in the black community is the black family, because family is really a sacred thing. Because family is the base fundamental unit in which civilization is built upon, ultimately, because it starts with the family, and then it works your way out into a neighborhood, and then a community, and then a city, right, a town, a state, and then ultimately a nation, and then from a nation you have a world. But that all starts with the family structure and the family unit, and we don't have that. You know, coming out of slavery, we're coming from broken families, where the family structure in the black community has been systematically destroyed by our open enemies, and we are suffering from that now. And ultimately, at the core of a strong family is a strong marriage between a man and a woman, and male and female relationships is one of the main problems that we suffer from in the black community.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. If we have so many, like just things set in place for the black family to fail. For example, being able to put your baby father on child support, and sometimes when they're in these instances, the father is present in the child's life, or sometimes the child's mother is making it difficult for the father to be present in the child's life. So it's things like that. Becoming too reliant on the government, for example, like, you know, with welfare and food stamps and the housing assistance and all of these things. I think, unfortunately, a lot of our people get comfortable with this assistance that a government allows. And so what we're seeing now is a president who's like, no, I'm taking all this away. If y'all want food stamps, we're going to deliver bags of certain foods to your home that you can have from here on out. Or even with the student loan forgiveness, we're about to take this away. And so I say all that to say, if he's doing these things right now, it's no telling what he'll do in the future. So what do you think would happen in the absence of all of these programs that make our people so dependent and reliant? You know, what do you think will happen to the family structure even after that point?
Right, I think that's an excellent point. Because in the Nation of Islam, we're taught by our teacher, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, always first and foremost to do for self. So we shouldn't really be dependent on a government that was never designed for us and has all these systems to actually keep us in the position that we're in now. So it's not that we're naturally inferior, we're actually, the system is designed on our backs. You know, America, the most powerful nation in the world, was built off the free slave labor for 400 plus years. That's how it became in its position of global hegemony that it has. So if government assistance was taken away, ultimately I think that would work for the good of the black community, because then we'd be forced to rely on ourselves and each other. However, we have to see each other as family, which we currently don't, and that comes from us not knowing ourselves.
Right. And I like how you talked about the not knowing ourselves, and I think kind of bringing it back to the family dynamic, I think a lot of reasons why relationships or marriages are failing nowadays is because people have a lack of individuality. Like, people go into these relationships without knowing themselves, without being broken, or going into these relationships with the expectation of that person is supposed to complete you when really that person is supposed to add to you, you know. So when we have these halves going into relationships to make a whole, when a relationship is supposed to be two wholes, because it takes two to be in a relationship, that dynamic then trickles down on their children, and then now you're putting your insecurities out onto your child. Or, you know, how can you teach a young boy how to be a man if you don't even know how to be a man for yourself? Or how am I going to teach a young girl to become a woman, or if I haven't even became a woman for myself? And I think that cycle just continues to trickle, because then they have kids and then they teach their kids what they know or what they were taught. And the reality is, you can't really blame a child for having a broken mindset or a broken way of life if they were never taught. Like, kids are literally like sponge. Whatever is put in them is going to come out of them. So I think that as a community, we have to get back to actually taking the time that we need to create ourselves as individuals, you know, because once I create and I learn and develop myself as an individual, learn my purpose, know what I'm actually here and called to be on this earth for, I'll be able to do that for myself, and then my partner should be able to do that for himself. And then when we come together, then we can actually make means happen instead of having to depend on the government, like you said, for a system that's not even created for us. And it's not to say anything against anyone that is dependent on the government. I get food stamps, you get what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, for some people, they are dependent on it, and if it was to get taken away, the reality of it is they will really have nothing. So, like I said, just getting back to that individuality, I think would make a big difference. And also, I forgot what I was going to say, but go ahead.
No, that was good.
Oh, I was getting ready to say, I think a lot of us have this self-made mindset, and I think that we talked about this before. You know, I don't need no man, or I don't need no woman. I'm good all by myself. We were never created to be individuals. Exactly. You were created to be in a partnership. Yeah. So at the end of the day, yes, I do need a man. I don't need a man to make me myself. I don't need a man to make me whole. But I need a man to create a family, to be this union of what God has called us to be. Literally, none of us were called to be alone. Like, when I'm on a Bible plan right now, and I'm, in the process of reading the Bible. But when man was on earth, he made a woman to help him. You know what I mean? To help him and to be a helper. I don't remember the exact verse, but he said, like, when he made her, she's here to help. She's here to help you do everything that you cannot do alone, and that's okay. So I think that we have to get out of this toxic mindset of you don't need no one else, and understand the difference on depending on someone and needing them to create you to be what God has called you to be. I know I was ready, but
No, that was good. That was good.
Thank you.
That was a good point. I think a lot of us are in that mindset of, like, I can do bad all by myself. And that's not the mindset we should be in. It should be, okay, let me work on myself. Let me make sure I'm good within myself. Let me make sure I'm whole, like you said, before I want to move into a partnership. And yeah, I think it was you that told me, like, a long time ago. I don't know if this switches the subject a little bit, but you said the people, cause you talked about being self-made. I think you said something along the lines of, like, none of us are self-made. All of us got either our knowledge or, basically, essentially our knowledge from somewhere else or someone else or some other being. And so, yeah, we may construct these theories or ideas ourselves or in our own type of, way of thinking. But essentially, we gain all this knowledge from other people, or we gain it from nature.
Yeah.
Sometimes we go out to nature and we hear God speak to us.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of went off on a tangent
No.
a little bit, but yeah, that knowledge always comes from somewhere else. So we need to get out of this mindset that's like self-made, or I did this on my own, or I'm good by myself. When that's not how life goes.
We were designed to be.
How we were designed.
And I feel also, if you think about it, nothing on this earth can be done by yourself. In order for a child to be born, it takes two.
Yeah.
In order for a job to be done, if I have a business and no one is buying from my business, the business is not going to flourish.
Yeah.
Like, in order for me to learn, I need someone to teach me. Everything on this earth, like, someone has to do it for you. The car that I have, someone else had to make it. I couldn't just do it by myself, you know? So I think that we have to be more okay with use. I don't mean using in the sense of taking advantage, but using people. That's why they're here. That's why, you know, he has some knowledge that I don't have. I need him to help me get to the next level. I wouldn't be where I am today without the teachers, without the mentors, without the pastors that I came in contact with. People are in your life for a reason, so use them and be okay with it. But I think it's just important, kind of going back to what I said, is going into these relationships or even these friendships with more of a holistic mindset and not these toxic habits and patterns, because that is what breaks down the dynamic of ultimately something that's meant to build us up and to empower us.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I agree with everything y'all said. We talked about self-improvement. So the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he teaches us that self-improvement is the basis for community development.
Yeah.
So I agree that when you, I think everybody should maybe have a period of in their life, you know, when they're alone, when they do discover who they are.
Right.
However, furthermore, the minister teaches us that you can never be the best man or woman that you can be by yourself. So he actually said that you're not even a man until you have a woman. You can never grow into, because together, then when y'all grow into God together as one. That's what the point of a marriage is, to complete you. I agree with that. I think that's one of the main benefits of marriage. And ultimately, when you are married, it eliminates that selfish thinking that you would have naturally just being single. The fact that you automatically now have to consider another person's wants, desires, and needs in your fundamental everyday thinking in life. And like you said, or that we all were alluding to, is, you know, we're all in this world together. Unity is a basic principle of life. The ocean seems infinite, but it's just made up of the multitude of many drops. Just like civilization is made up the multitude of many different individuals. So I think a lot of our marriages fail because we don't understand the basic nature of men and women. You know, a man and woman are different, and unless we appreciate the divine distinction that we naturally have in our natures, then we're always going to suffer. So men are made a certain way, right? Men and women have different hormones, they have different neurological patterns, and they think differently. You know, we can be looking at the same thing and we see two different things, and that's natural. So our differences are not for us to fight and clash with one another, but they're meant to complete and complement one another when we know how to effectively listen and communicate with one another to appreciate that different opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And I know a lot of our listeners are either in a relationship or single right now. And I know when I was in that period of being single, I kind of had or when I was even younger in relationships, I had a mindset of feeling weird that I didn't understand the duality between a man and a woman. And I wanted to, you know, in society, I think as strong women, a lot of women who are that dominant, powerful type of woman, we kind of struggle with having a dominant man as well, because we think that some way, somehow, that limits our power or it takes away from who we are. And so a lesson that I had to learn myself was that, no, we're here for a reason. Both of us, we're opposites for a reason. And you know what they say, opposites attract. And what I had to learn is that masculine energy, it really balances me out. I also had to learn what I actually was attracted to, what I actually did like. And I think a lot of women today are attracted to men who have a lot of masculine energy, and they don't know how to balance that masculine energy with their feminine energy, or they've been grown up to abandon that feminine energy, because as human beings we all have masculine and feminine. And so in a household, what happened was it was either just the mother or just the father. And so a lot of young boys and young women, even, we only one of those type of energies were catered to for the most part. And so when we go into relationships and now it's time to balance both of those energies out, we really don't know how, because some of us have too much masculine, some of us have too much feminine, and so those partnerships don't work. So just going back to my my past and my experiences with that. Okay, so welcome back, guys. We are going to talk a little bit about what it means to be a soft black man.
Please, let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it. Shaheed, what's your thoughts on that?
A soft man is one who is either not aware of his responsibilities, or he is too cowardly to accept them and meet them. So the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan teaches us and has taught me that when you want a woman, you are taking on responsibility, a lot of responsibility. So, we as black men growing up in America, not knowing any better from what we were taught via this society, the goal is to have as many women as possible, to have sex with as many women as possible, to have as many women as possible. But we don't understand that we're destroying our future when we do that. Mm-hmm. And we're not accepting the responsibility that is required with having a woman. Just men that are uncommitted to their responsibility is a man who's soft, a man who's not willing to fight, to die and kill to protect you is not a man who's worthy of your time. A man who's not intelligent enough and strong enough and competent enough to take care of you is a soft man. He's not worthy of your time. A man who's not totally and fully committed to you is not worthy of your time. So you shouldn't give him any time of day.
Yes, y'all hear that?
Yeah. And see, I think that you are a lot more politically correct than I am. So what I'm about to say when I sound as polished, but the truth is, I think that there are a lot, if that's what we describe a soft man as, I think that there is a lot of soft men running and walking around here. And I think one thing that I really value you as a man, for you to be able to say that shows that that's not the standard. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of times as women, we have accepted, well, maybe it's just my job to teach him, or, maybe he's going to get better, or with time, and the reality is, if we have men like you who can actually say that and live by it, then that means that we're not accepting the standard. We're really accepting below the standard. You get what I'm saying? And I feel like it's time for us as women to let that go. Like, I, am victim of that. Like, for a long time, I've allowed a lot of men who fell in the category of everything that he said into my life, to destroy me. And the truth is, I really didn't know my own self-worth, because had I known it the way I know it now, I wouldn't have accepted it or allowed it, but I think as women, it's time for us to open our eyes and actually hold these boys accountable and allow them to be men before they dominate themselves in our space. No, I'm not allowing you into my body until you can hold yourself accountable as a man, until you can raise the standard for yourself, hold yourself accountable. What are you actually going to teach me? What are you feeding me mentally and emotionally and spiritually? I need a man who is going to, for one, who can hear from God, who, for two, when God tells you to move, you move. Because if you can't do that, what are you going to do for me? I'm trying to develop those characteristics for myself. So if that's not something that you embody, then all you're going to do is throw me off. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of times there's a lot of strong and powerful and beautiful women who have those qualities to hear from God, to move when God says to move, to know their purpose, to know what it is that they're doing, but we hold ourselves back for these soft boys, expecting them to be men, because we feel that that's the standard, and we feel that we can teach them, and we feel that we can elevate them, failing to realize, no, there's a man who's actually walking, who knows his purpose, who knows his responsibility, who knows his duty as a man. These men know what they're doing. But at the end of the day, we allow them to make us feel like they don't. Girl, please.
Yeah, I think now it's the norm to have a guy that cheats all the time, and to have a guy. It's the norm for us to be ride or die.
Yeah.
Well, who are you ride or dying for?
Boy.
Not this man who's not even ride or dying for God, I would hope.
Right.
And so I think what needs to happen now is a lot of our brothers, like Shaheed, we need to continue to keep these men in check. Let them know, hey, look, you know, instead of focusing on this woman right now, maybe you should come to the mosque with me. Maybe you should go to church. Maybe you should, you know, come to this Bible study with me. You should be focusing on the right things because right now you're distracted. And if you're not even able to be whole within yourself, if you're not even focused on the right things within yourself, how are you focused on a woman? How do you even have time for a woman right now? And so I think a lot of us need to, and even with women, we need to keep our homegirls in check. Not being the girl that's like, oh, you need to leave him and and putting bad, you know, just bad knowledge in our homegirls' ear. But we need to let them know, hey, are you focused on yourself right now?
Right.
How's your diet looking? You know, how, like, what's going on within you to where this is happening? Because if you were right within yourself, you wouldn't even have attracted this man into your life. And so we all need to have this honest conversation with each other and keep each other in check so that we avoid these things. And one thing I know also is, as women, if we elevate ourselves and we stop accepting these soft boys or these boys in general, then they'll have no other choice than to elevate.
Right.
And so what we need to do is really realize the power that we have as women. Like we say, like we see here today, a lot of women are in college. A lot of women are entrepreneurs. And that's why these women are like, I can do bad all by myself, because we're like, a lot of women are like, we're not accepting anything below what we know we deserve. And so that's also something that comes with that type of territory. And so I think if we continue to hold ourselves as images of God as women, then the men have no other choice but to follow. And those who don't follow, you know, they either get right or they get lost.
Yeah, so just as an extension of that, it just made me think that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan were given the hardest job ever given to a man, which was the redemption of their people. So, you know, we really have suffered tremendously because we have no self-identity. We can't trace our ancestry back. We don't have a culture. We don't have a language of our own. We have no concept except that which was given to us in this society. So when we're dealing with black people, we're dealing with hurt, abused, and messed up people. That's our condition. So in the process of redeeming us as a people, redeem is to restore value that was taken away. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that 75% of his work was with the black woman, but he would start with the black man. The black man has to rise up and take his natural position as the head of his household first, to be a protector, to be a provider of his family first. But the bulk of the work in terms of resurrecting the people, that comes from the woman and her specific relation to God that the woman has. So the woman is so distinctively valuable because every single human being that comes into reality comes through the womb of a woman. The thoughts, the emotional state, and the desire that a woman has when she's pregnant goes into the child. So every champion, every great scholar, every prophet, every great person in any field or category that was ever brought into the world came through a woman. But same thing, every demon, every Hitler, every murderer, every bad person also came through a woman. So the future of a people is in the hands of the woman. But the woman can't effectively do her job as a nurturer if she doesn't have the man doing his job as well. So that just made me think of just that unity, because black men, they suffer in this society. We suffer tremendously, and women do as well. And the only salvation that we have is with each other, not us denigrating each other, but us seeing the mutual hurt and suffering from a mutual journey and toward the destiny and the future that we have is attainable through collaboration.
Yeah, and it is a such thing as trauma bonding. So a lot of these relationships that we see essentially are two people who have trauma that use that trauma as a way to bond with each other and actually create a relationship out of just that trauma, which I think is the most dangerous thing. But I'm not surprised by it because people go to naturally what's comfortable to them or what feels at home. So a lot of people are still comfortable with their trauma. They're still living out their trauma. They see their trauma every day based on their geographic location, and so and based on their mental. So we, are naturally attracted to what feels at home or what feels comfortable. So, like you said, once we get that knowledge of self and we're able to face ourselves and we're able to face our traumas and sit in a room, sit down by ourselves and literally think about or write down or pray about whatever it is that's holding your spirit back or your soul back, that's allowing you to stay complacent or, in this negative space. And I think just going back to what we said a lot and what we mentioned a lot, it all starts with self. All of this starts with self. Once you change it, like we say, change a woman, you can change a nation. And then also what I noticed with a lot of family dynamics and even with mine is once I began to change myself and elevate my thinking, my family members and even my friends came to me for knowledge. They're like, well, what's that Queen of Fool book are you talking about? Let me buy that Queen of Fool book. I want to learn more about it because you're speaking so highly of it. Oh, my family came here the other day and they know I love singing bowls. And they're like, oh, let me see, what does that singing bowl do? They're very inquisitive. Even my little brother, he's very, very, very smart. I got him Message to the Black Man. And so I got that for him while he was still in high school. And so it's certain things that we have to do as, if you love your family, if you truly love your friends, you're going to want to elevate them, especially if you're already elevated yourself. And so I think going back to that selfish mindset that we said we're in, we have to get out of that mindset in the sense that we want to see at least our immediate friends and family members elevate if we don't want to see it for the world, you know what I mean? Or if we don't have the capacity to want to, implement that change for the world. What it starts with is yourself. Then you'll see that it'll spread out to your friends and family, and eventually it gets to, like you said, the nation and the world at large and your community. So yeah, I definitely agree with everything you were saying.
So do you have any advice that you would give to the broken man on ways that he should fix himself?
Yes, I do. I would say open up, learn, right? Knowledge. And the best source of knowledge, I think, is a man who I believe was divinely sent to resurrect his people in our current midst, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. There is no person with a track record of restoring black families like his. There is no person with a track record of bringing in broken down men and making them into men who are on a journey to attainment with God, with their wives and their families. Look up the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Study his lectures, study his disposition and the knowledge and the work that he's done, over the 60 plus years of his resurrection of the black community. I think that's first and foremost. I don't know a greater man maker than him, right? And directly, that would be the best advice I could give.
Do you have any books specifically?
Yeah, I do. That book right there. I was gonna have it as a prop here, but it's a smaller table than I expected. So, Message to the Black Man by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I think is the #1 book that gives you a thorough, comprehensive knowledge of self with a message that is specifically tailored toward our specific ailment that we suffer in this country, in our sojourn, in our journey to where we are now. So it's pretty much the antidote for white supremacy and gives us, I think, the disposition of unity, the dispositions that we need to rectify our condition.
Mm-hmm. And look, I just have a quick story. My boyfriend actually has that book, right? And so he keeps it, he usually keeps it on the side on his nightstand. And this is, hopefully he doesn't get mad at me for telling this story. But we were just sitting in a room and, we were drinking. Sometimes we like to have our wine. And so he told me he took a sip and then he looked at the book and how Elijah Muhammad, he's like, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is just sitting there, with his face like that. And he was like, let me put the drink down. And he felt so bad. I just thought that was really funny because, that book, it'll get you right. And you know, as black men, I think a lot of black men need that, because if some black men don't have a father figure or a male figure in their lives, it's good to see that, you know, and receive that knowledge from one. So yeah, that brings me into my next question, which is, what does it mean to identify as quote unquote black? Is there an underlying identity crisis associated with that term?
Yes, absolutely. That term, I think that's the main thing that we suffer from is an identity crisis, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave a very specific, unique disposition on that term that nobody else really shared or introduced to us. He said, he asked the question, the first question in the student enrollment, who is the original man? Right? You ever heard that question before, Brittany?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, that's a pretty
listening.
unique question. The answer that he gave is very deep, it's complex, but so we can try to get into that with as much time as we have. The answer to that question, who is the original man, is the original man is the Asiatic black man, the maker, the owner, the cream of the planet Earth, the God of the universe. So that's what he gave to us as an identity, and he traced that back to our origin in creation. So he was saying that at one point in time, this planet that we now call Earth was called Asia. So to say Asiatic is not saying that, you know, we originate from India or Chinese, that I'm really a Chinese man. He's saying that I'm the original man of this planet, and he referred to black as the original people. So if we were to, and I'm gonna overlay some pictures now for what I'm saying to show the viewers that if you trace back the original people, the original inhabitants of the earth all around the globe, they all have skin complexion like us. So whether you're here or South America, whether you are in the islands of the Pacific, in East Africa or India, these are all black people in terms of skin, right? So now we identify black as African features, but he was saying and teaching us our common ancestry as being the biological descendants of God, that ultimately why the African black man may have, you know, hair like mine and a broader nose, the black man in India that has a straighter nose and long straight hair is all one family ultimately. So when we say black, we're talking about the aboriginal people of the earth that are the direct descendants of the Creator. So that is it's a unifying term, right? So Pan-Africanism is when it's really a new term, right? Because before European colonization, that term didn't exist, that thought pattern didn't exist. But Pan-Africanism is a great idea in which, regardless of the different tribe that you're in, whether you're a Yoruba or Ashanti or a Mandinka or Zulu, you're all one African people. You've all suffered from the hands of European colonization. You've all had your, you've been through devastation. And when we're able to see each other as black Africans, then we can have a power base. So the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad's disposition was the same, just broader and deeper globally, saying that whether you're in the continent of Africa or you're in Sri Lanka, you are a black people. You're the aboriginal people of the earth. And that is a much wider, all-encompassing notion of identity that we really don't have. So I think that's it.
I know I recently traveled to Egypt, and one huge thing that they always ask you is, what's your nationality? And it's something that it does to me internally when I have to say American, because I don't resonate with being American, because, you know, when you hear that term American, you always think Caucasian, or you think something that's just not me. I want to say Africa. I'm here. I'm back in Egypt, so, you know, automatically I want to say here. What do you mean? What's my nationality? But, you know, a lot of them, or I shouldn't say a lot, a few of them, or, you know, a certain amount don't have that mentality of like, oh, you're returning back home. Of course, you know, when they see my boyfriend with the beard and lighter skin, they're like, oh, you look Egyptian. But me, who's like a little darker skin, or even somebody else who's a little darker skin, they don't really have that same mindset. So yeah, I can see what you mean when you say that, because I kind of, when I travel to other countries, I struggle to say, or it hurts me really to say that my nationality is American, because as black people, or as African people, African American people, I feel like we struggle with knowing our nationality. Like what nation do we belong to?
Right. So we suffer from, I mean, nationality is, the nation you grew up with. So if I grew up in Jamaica, my nationality would be Jamaican. However, that small little island doesn't define me, right? And even more so with what I was alluding to when I previously was talking about Africa as a whole is we can no longer allow European cartographers to identify who we are, in the sense that Africa, the borders that we define as Africa now with Madagascar on the side is not ancient borders, right?
Nope.
Our people move freely throughout the earth. Being from that continent is not sufficient to describe you. That's why being black is not a color. Black is the essence from which color comes from. Mm-hmm. Everybody comes from the original black man, and that's who you are. So whether you're Jamaican or from Mexico or from the United States, being black has nothing to do with your nationality or even your ethnic group. Black is the means that you are a direct biological descendant of the original black God. That's what that means.
That's really good. That's really good. Yeah. So, I guess this is kind of going backwards a little bit. We discussed a lot on the Black family. One thing that I kind of mentioned, I believe, in the last episode, but I wanted to talk about to get more clarification from you personally, is another thing. When I went to Egypt, our driver was Muslim, and a question that I asked him, I was like, hey, do you know about the Nation of Islam? And so he was kind of, what he told me was like, no, we have like it's a lot of us around the world, and we practice in our different subgroups, but he was like, no, not exactly. So my question is to you, is what does it look like? What does that look like when you travel around the world and you meet people who are also, Muslim, I guess you can say, but
yeah,
like, how does that interaction happen?
Yeah, so Islam is Islam, right? Islam is peace. A Muslim is one who submits their will to do the will of God. That's the definition of a Muslim. So that extends further beyond people's self-identification, right? So I could say, truthfully, I'm a Christian and a Muslim because I want to live my life the way Jesus lived his life, but I am striving to submit my will to do the will of God. So in Arabia, people misassociate Islam with being an Arab religion, right? And the different sects that are what's it called? Sects, S-E-C-T-S, that are set up being a Sunni or Shiite. So ultimately, if you are a real Muslim, then you are the same, regardless of the little discrepancies that you would view, right? Because in the time of Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah, peace be upon him, there was no Shiite, there was no Sunni, it was just Islam, it was Muslim. So the deviations and discrepancies the discrepancies are an indication of deviation from the way of the Prophet. So to extend that to the Nation of Islam, I would say the Nation of Islam is the most modern, up-to-date understanding of Islam, because if you look at what's happening in the Middle East, our brothers and sisters, our people in the Middle East are on the brink of fire because of their deviation from the book and that which they were given. Right now, but Iran and Saudi Arabia are at conflict, and they should be able to find unity based off their shared beliefs and perceptions, of reality. But they're letting modern contemporary things like America's wealth and America's power divide them, and that is a dangerous position to be in, as nations that are supposed to be Muslim nations. So back to the Nation of Islam in America, when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was teaching his people Islam in America, he couldn't give it in a way that it was given in Arabia. The same basic principles of freedom, justice, and equality, but it can't be given with Arab culture, right? So I can't wear, an Arabian outfit, with a big long beard, and try and bring that to, a black man walking down the street, like, yo, what is this? It's not me, but it's the same principles of truth, of peace that are transferable. If that answers.
So, yeah, it does. My last question is, what is the future of religion?
That's a good question, because religion is has been subverted to the biggest tool for slavery that exists. and that's not what it's supposed to be. Supposedly, it should be, if it was done correctly, to be a systematized way of getting close to God. So a lot of our people in our generation like to claim that they're spiritually. They're not religious at all, but they're just spiritual. A lot of us say that as an excuse to not adhere to the discipline that's required in saying that you're part of a religion. So we're taught that Islam is mathematics and mathematics is Islam, that Islam was given as a religion, but it just means submission to the will of God. So before the Prophet in Arabia was there teaching Islam as the system that exists now, people were still practicing Islam because it was the very nature of the people. So religion is not that ancient, but it does have its place, especially with the condition that most of us are in now. We need systems. We need structure to get us back to a certain place.
I agree. And I know you said that was the last question, but I would just say, to wrap it up, how do you believe that religion impacts us as individuals, and I guess us as families as well?
I think that overall, us being taught Christianity the way that we were taught has been it's been very detrimental to the black community. Just the history of black people in America, us being taught a watered down version of Christianity, given the Bible with certain passages in it, to love your oppressor and to love your enemy and turn the other cheek in the face of oppression, things like that were taken outside of the context of religion. But I think good religion, if you have a good pastor or preacher or imam that's actually showing you the principles of God and God's systems and the nature of God, bringing out the nature of yourself, then that can be extremely beneficial to families. So it just depends on what version of religion that you're dealt with or that we're associated with. I don't believe that most people have real good religion, because I think that's very rare. But if you do attain that and it brings you practical benefit in your life, then and the systems that you adhere to are beneficial for everyone, then I do believe that is beneficial to the family structure.
I agree.
So before we leave, I wanted to talk about just the word love, because I think that's the strongest power and force that we have as human beings. That is love is the creative force of life, right? So before we were talking, the main subject of today was the male-female relationships, and naturally men and women are attracted to each other like magnets. It's a very powerful force that is, if not handled properly, it creates the situation that we're in today. But we have to understand that love is duty. It's a verb. It's action. It's responsibility. It's long suffering, and we get caught up in that. So a lot of times women will look to be in love with a man, or they want that man to love them, but don't be fooled by, like we said, the games of little boys masquerading as men. And that if you really want to know if a man loves you, that's very easy, because he'd be totally committed to you. It wouldn't be any question about that, because you can see it evidently through his actions. So and that's not just for that, that's with every relationship. If a person loves you, you know it based off what they do. You don't judge people by what they say. You judge a person by their actions. That's who you are. You're not who you think you are. You're not what you say you are. You are what you do repeatedly. So when we understand that, and we accept the responsibility that it takes to really love ourselves, then we change the way we eat. When we really love our family, then we change the way we talk to our brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers. When we love ourselves as a people, then we don't kill each other in the streets. We take different corrective action to correct the course that we're in. And love is the greatest force that we have if it's real and genuine.
Yeah, I learned that on my journey of just learning knowledge of self. What I noticed is like, dang, do I really love myself? I had to start evaluating a whole bunch of things about myself, to where I was like, okay, I say I love myself, but I'm eating death. I say I love myself, but I'm listening to this music that's